fam. I hope you're doing fine. Welcome to yet another episode of the Evolve with Intent podcast. It's always an honor, a privilege I don't take for granted that you take the time to listen into this particular podcast. Out of the million podcasts that do exist on the internet, out of all the things you could be doing with your time, for some reason I end up in your ears, and honestly, I do not take that lightly. It's people like you that make this podcast worthwhile. So where do I start? Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, happy longest January. I must say this year's January hasn't been as long. I don't know about you, but I feel like it was way kinda less hot as rain. I don't know, I feel like it felt very, it wasn't as intense. I feel like the Januaries before, it would be so hot. And then for some reason, you'd literally feel it in the air that, hey, it is January and it is here to stay. But for some reason, today is the 27th and the month is coming to an end. Duh. Well, anyways, it's an honor to be doing this today. I am saying this because I have news to share. So this particular episode will be, I think, the last in among the scheduled ones of the Evolve with Intent podcast. Yep, hear me out. So if you've been part of this community from day one, I did start this podcast I think about 2 years ago, and originally it was called Joanne's 2 Cents. So guys who are there, like the day ones, know how all that came to life. And a year later we rebranded to the Evolve with Intent podcast because it was purely aimed at having conversations that help us evolve to become better versions. Hence the very straightforward direct name, Evolve with Intent. Over time, 2.5 years in now, making 3, the time I've been at it as a person, because as you know, if you've listened to all those episodes, I always share from like personal experience, like I embodied every episode I put out there. There wasn't a thing that I shared that I wasn't like going through, which means that most of the episodes were vulnerable, soliloquies, conversations with people. And yeah, so I feel like when I was reflecting on excuse me, when I was reflecting on last year and the new year and what I want this podcast to be and where I wanted to go, I felt like I had done enough personal development with that. Like, because I feel like that was the time of my life where I was learning and unlearning things, picking up new habits, dropping old bad ones. Like, I felt like that was enough of personal development. Like, you cannot spend your entire life really just grow, like learning. It's about time you put what you've learned to practice, which explains why I won't be actively doing episodes here. We have a new podcast coming up, and I cannot wait to tell you all about it. If you listen to this and you do not know about the new podcast yet, then you should go on my social media. So we have a new direction that's coming, which I will share in the new podcast, and I promise I'll tell you all about it. But about this particular podcast, I feel like it's had its time. And honestly, I love the internet for that particular purpose, that it's an archive of knowledge. I hope and pray that all the 36, 37, 38 episodes that I've shared, which is very slow for someone who has done this for 3 years. Again, which I think the justification I have for that is that I was sharing genuinely. I wasn't trying to like, I want 50 episodes by the end of the year, or I was genuinely doing it out of pure passion, but also like I would wait for me to get to a point where I have something to share that I feel like could help someone else, for me to come on here and bubble away, than when you creating content for the purpose of I don't know, for the numbers, for you get. So I've done a lot of reflection. The most part of today's episode is basically just going to give you guys my send away word in regards to this podcast and who I am and who I'm evolving to become. So without any further ado, guys, let's just get right into it. So for about a month now, I decided to take a social media break. So if you listen to my last episode here, No, I think the one before, do not set ridiculous New Year's resolutions. The one before 2024 reflections. There's a lot of ranting. I think a lot of my episodes throughout last year had a lot of ranting and, and low energy and high energy, which as much as it's embarrassing, at the end of the day when I'm going to sleep, I'm like, as long as you're authentic, that's all that matters. I was going through a lot of that throughout last year. So I don't know how I arrived at the idea of taking a social media break. So throughout the first 2-3 weeks of Jan, I completely turned off social media consumption. And what this taught me, I didn't delete my accounts, of course. I just deleted the social media apps. I learned a thing or two about the time that I was away, and honestly, in the time that we're in, the information era, as they'd like to say it, it's a crazy time to be who you are and still coexist with the internet and consume and process the entire coexistence of this whole situation. Honestly, the time I was away, I learned a couple of things that I just wanted to come on here and share first, which for some reason I feel like the time I was away really justified the reason as to why I need to make the shift. So one, I was reflecting. I think all of us were reflecting really about last year and the new year, new me. What am I going to do better? What am I going to do different? And honestly, when I was in that gray area where like my friends would be like, "Oh, did you see this story? Did you?" I'm like, "No, I don't, because I am not on social media." It felt very strange, because people that know me closely know that me and phones and social media are like 5 and 6. I'm like, my God. So that shift, at first I thought I would really struggle by day 1, day 2, but I didn't. It was way more peaceful, like in my head, and life was just very... The sun outside was hot. It did rain. The weather was cool and hot. Like, there's a lot of touching grass for me. And I think most of the pressure and the overthinking and the unsettlement and the lack of like satisfactory in life comes from overly consuming social media. And I just want to say, you're not miserable, you're not behind, you're not struggling. You are just on social media a lot. And honestly, it took me the break. It costed me the break for me to get that I am fine. I am not living a shitty life. I have a roof over my head. I do not have savings. Like, the things that are not kawa, but it's not as bad as the way social media makes it look like. I don't know if that makes sense. I'm not saying I am an easy target, but I think the way we consume the internet and social media sort of lets us believe that the grass is greener on the other side, because people are sharing, "Oh, I was at this restaurant. Oh, I took a trip to this country. Oh, I got married." People are sharing the highlights. And for some reason, even when someone keeps telling you, "Guys, social media is not real," you don't listen. Like, your subconscious mind doesn't get it, because you're thinking, you're like, yeah, even if it's not perfect, how comes I'm getting married? Oh, even if it's not, even if the grass is not green on the other side, how comes they are at a fancy hotel in the Bahamas? Or you get, like, by default, your mind will not believe it, because for some reason there are parts about your life that you don't like. So the 1, 2, 3 weeks that I was away, honestly, I learned that I am fine. I am not behind. I am not late. It took me that silence of life for me to just process everything, like too much consumption. Because what led me to that point was I would wake up. If you saw the pieces of content I put out on TikTok, I think towards the end of the year was the reason you're feeling unproductive and burnt out by 11 or 10 in the morning is because the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning is open your social media. And it's true, guys. You burn out your most productive hours and self-scrolling recklessly, and it burns you out. It even makes it feel like your job sucks, or it's shitty, or your clothes are not cool enough, or like your skin is not... like, for some reason, it just drains the life out of you for you to feel like your life is supposed to be some sort of aesthetic to show off on the internet. All around the same time that I put out that video around about avoid scrolling on social media in the most productive hours of the day, I happened to watch a documentary on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. Please go check it out. Guys, it changed, like it blew my mind so hard that I at some point was questioning, because my career, my job is literally comms, and lately of course comms now is like digital comms. Like, I mean, there's no comms without you putting it on the internet. Like, there is no communication without it going through the internet. Like, traditional media is dead, really, almost dead, really. Conversation for another day. But that documentary blew my mind. So to just give you guys a brief context about this docuseries, it says the guy who, and I think probably this is public knowledge, probably everyone knows, and I didn't. And when I watched, I was like, wow. So take, for example, Elon Musk or whoever, the guy who owns Facebook, the guy who owns TikTok. These guys create these apps. They know me, you are consumers. So you wake up in the morning, buy a phone, load internet, and you consume. There's a business that wants to promote its product or service on the internet. So they pay, the paid advertising thing you hear about is you. You are the paid advertising, because now you're on YouTube watching this video, but you have to watch this ad. The Glovo app, the Jumia, the Jumia delivery ads that you must watch. You cannot skip it until I think 10 seconds. You're zonking in into your device or your phone is the paid advertising that these apps sell to people that pay them. So that's how they make money. But again, it works for them. So literally, they're like, when I got the twist of it, was they were like actual geniuses. You create this app, human beings are just there to consume. Like, you're sitting in the couch of your home, you don't want to talk to your friends, you'll open your phone and scroll. It works for them. There's people who, take for example me, who I'm creating content for people like you to consume. So you wake up in the morning and just scroll through my videos, scroll through my photos. You get, like, meanwhile, the guy who created this app is somewhere sitting at the beach, probably reciting a prayer. And this cycle of madness where I am consuming, there's a creator, there's a consumer, there's people who recklessly cannot go a day without it. The addiction of consuming, the addiction of tapping into other people's lives. It's a cycle that just keeps working for itself. And then there's a part that I was explaining the algorithm. When you search for, let's say, basketball videos, and now for some reason your entire timeline is filled with basketball reels, there's creators who just decided to specialize in basketball content. I don't know if I'm explaining this best, but to make sense to you, please go to Netflix and watch that documentary. I promise the way you consume social media will definitely change, because one, there'll always be content. Unless it vanishes, there's going to be new content pumped out all the time. Again, for me, the closure was that there's no pressure in trying to ruin your life or lose your mind creating content for the internet, because while you hit publish or post or go live, there's like a million other people doing the same thing. So when you lose your mind over other people's highlights because these people have put a camera, look at me, I've put a mic here and I'm recording this, like for me to sit here and now start telling you guys, I'm getting married, I'm moving to the US, I bought a new car. For you to be over there to listen to me and believe me is the madness that just had me feeling like it is not that serious. By the way, like, social media is not that serious. It's not that deep. People have access to free internet, cheap internet, free smartphones, and the worst side of this part is the dangers that it comes with it, as much as there is like a good side to it as well. So when I understood that cycle, that chain, that the way this whole thing goes back and forth to different people, honestly, it sent me a whole different direction that just had me feeling like, hey, you really don't have to lose your mind over social media. And the reason you're feeling miserable and shitty about your life is not because it's actually miserable. Social media has a way, it makes it feel like you're doing way worse, when in actual sense, the sun is shining outside. leaves are still green. People still care about people. I've said that meme of like like away from social media, people still date broke men. People still live with their parents. People still hold the same phone they held 10 years ago. Like, no one is buying a new phone every year. They are just like away from what the internet is selling to you. A new phone is coming out. Everyone is sharing reviews, and for some reason, you feel like your old phone from 10 years ago is the worst thing to happen to you, or you living at your parents' house is still the worst thing. It's not, I promise. There's like a billion people in this world, and I think social media sort of takes up about a very small percentage. So this is your reminder to touch grass. If you're feeling miserable and shitty and comparing yourself and thinking about timings and, oh god, I'm unlucky, take a break. Do 3 days at least. Do a week. And I promise you'll feel way, way better about your life than you do right now. The time that I took, the 2-3 solid weeks of like no consumption, no creating for me, told me a couple of things about life, honestly, and I don't think I would probably have arrived at them this sooner if I hadn't like had the time to actually freeze my headspace and think out. And like, the other thing that I learned was your biggest fears in this life, or like failure, whatever you're so much afraid of, it may actually come to life, or they may not. But if by any chance those fears come to life, you will manage to sail through. Because and this will make much more sense if you do listen into that episode that I did, the one on 2024 reflections. I did rant a bunch, I know, and most of it was rooted from my fear of like things, of how you assess yourself and try to gauge your life and future based on the situation that you're going through. So I did rant a bunch, I repeat, and it's very embarrassing, but each time I remember, I'm like, I do this to help people to like, to be as authentic as I can, not to sell you guys like the wrong image of this. Like, I struggle even when I know better, even when I've been better placed or have resources and people around me, I still struggle. So in that episode, you should listen to it if you haven't. It will make more sense. The time away really told me that hey, all the things you're afraid of are probably truly like scary things, and they may actually come to life, unfortunately. But when they do, you'll manage. Like, you won't die. Like, you won't, like, because I feel like for me, I was so afraid of like this, that, you get. Yet, for some reason, I did manage, and then in my head, I'm like, it wasn't as scary, or probably as over projecting, because I am comparing myself to other people. Yeah. And that's why I'm saying that your biggest fears in this life may not necessarily ever come to life. Or they may actually come to life, but when they do, somehow you'll manage to sail through. Here's another thing the time away did teach me about life. And again, like I said, this will only make so much sense to you if you do listen into that episode. But also if you are going through tough times, really, in your head or in actual real life, like you feel like you're struggling, you're stagnant, you're not going anywhere, your friends have things going, you don't. This I learned throughout that silence of life, without social media, that there is nothing that life is throwing at you that you can't handle. I don't know, and I'm saying that as a believer, guys. Like, everything that you're going through, no matter how tough it is, it's supposed to shape you into the person you're supposed to become. This is going to sound childish, but I thought finding yourself was enough. Then you stay away from trouble times, or you always know which step to take or which decision to make or not. Are you making the right ones or not? And it wasn't enough. And I think for me, I struggled with that reality for like the longest period of time. I thought by finding yourself early enough, then you can chase your dreams early enough, and it would take you 2-3 years and you'd make it. It's not the reality. Like, tough times really teach you so much about life, and for me, I had to learn it that way. That whatever you're going through, you can actually handle it, because if you aren't, then it would kill you. But the fact that you're not dying, you're right here, that means you can handle. So the sooner you can look at ways of finding solutions or building resilience, the earlier for you, the better for you. speaking of resilience, I also learned that you have to learn to build muscle for the tough times. And this, I'm just gonna share as honest as I can be. I don't wanna say I'm like a very soft person, but conversation for another day about Gen Zs being very lazy and having not slow, like weak resilience, like weak muscle for tough times. Like we can barely endure a struggle. Things get hard here and there, and you want to quit, you question everything. That time, that silence told me that, hey, there's no one who's succeeded in this life that's had it the easy way. And I know this sounds very cliche, like something people say a lot, but like until a lot of these things happen to you, for you to leave them, then you get it. We have to build muscle for the tough times. That silence away from me consuming and creating and trying to like clutter my mind to just have it. I noticed that I think the things that I was going through weren't as bad. And life could actually have been 10 times worse. But I was fine. Most of the battles and struggles were mostly in my head. And the time when I was just emptying my head, I felt like maybe I was whining too much. Maybe I am just weak. And I'm not saying that whatever you're going through is not hard enough. It is hard enough compared to how much muscle you've built. Like I said, we have to build muscle for the tough times. If you really want something, your goal, your dream, it's not gonna come easy. And just because times are hard, the future is unclear, doesn't mean that you change direction or you question it. Because for me, that's what I was processing. I was processing this podcast, my career, things that I want to do with my life over money over, you get like. So hey guys, we need to build muscle. I think for me that's it. Like I'm trying to find ways, and it all starts in the mind, by the way. Like when you see how you make a push-up and you hang in there like a plank, like you just hold it. You're like, I'm gonna hold and see how much pain I can take. Again, it's all in your brain. If you can program your mind to endure it, just the same way guys do ice baths. Yeah, I was trying to learn about ways to like build resilience starting from your brain. You do realize an ice bath is like one of those things, and when you read about it, it's one of the tools you can use to like program your mind to tell yourself that this is not as bad as I think it is. Like I'm panicking, I'm just faced with like a new challenge, but it's not as bad. I can hang in here, I can stay, I can push another 2 months, another 6 months to see how this works out. The last thing that this time away really taught me is something about God. And I honestly landed on, it was a video that I landed on, I think on X, that was talking about God isolating you to teach you something. So around that time, honestly, I don't want to say I was isolated. I wasn't exactly isolated, but then I felt so alone in my struggle. Like I felt like no matter who I talk to, they don't get what I am trying to say I'm going through. And that sounds unfair to the people, of course, that care about me. But honestly, I felt like I'm trying to explain to you something like this, but you seem like you're getting something totally different. And it's normal. A lot of times people won't get where you're coming from. And it's not their fault. Probably because one, they can't relate really, and maybe their version of reality is different. So please don't be mad. Don't hate your friends because you're telling them this and they're not understanding. And like I feel like even on the times when I was thinking about what can I do, where can I go, who can I talk to fix this, I didn't feel like my parent, or like I feel like I was just so alone in this headspace. And what that video said was, God isolates you to teach you something. And honestly, for me, the lessons that I learned throughout that time are the ones that I shared with you. Keep away from social media. And God just told me that space. I feel like that was God's way of telling me to, hey, breathe. It's like, you know how you jump into a huge basin of water, but because you didn't see the edges of the basin, now you're thinking like, oh my God, I'm in a lake, I'm going to drown. But when you actually pause and like breathe, you will realize you're not going to drown. It's just, it's unknown, it's unclear, it's new. I'm not familiar, but I'll not die. And this can't be it. Like you know how they say, if it's not okay, then it's not the end. So same guys. I do not know where your headspace is at, but mine has completely evolved in like the shortest time ever. And my turning point was a social media detox. So if you are going through that same space, I would advise you do the same. Take a step away from spaces that just drain out your energy. If it doesn't necessarily even have to be social media, you could be those people who are like very selective, and like you're very disciplined. You don't just consume for, you scroll 5-10 minutes to just declutter your mind. And they're very, very funny pieces of content on the internet. We can't deny that. So if it helps, if you're those people, way to go really. But like, step away from spaces, people. If it's family that maybe you'd share about a challenge and they tell you, oh, that's witchcraft, oh, you need to go and pray. People that make you feel like you're the problem, spaces, environments that make you feel like you have a problem, detox, declutter, like take space away from it and see what that looks like for you. I hope this helps, guys. I don't want to say this is like the last episode. I'm sure I'll have some other, I don't know, soliloquy of sorts to come on here and share. But if that doesn't happen, there will be vlogs on TikTok. The new podcast direction will still give us very, very impactful conversations. So I suggest you look out for it. I won't drop the name here, but yeah, dropping soon. It's always so fun and such a way for me to brain dump here, and it gives me so much closure to just come on here, guys, and give you like an actual life update, to like just get in touch with you about the things that matter, to help you become a better version of yourself. So I hope this helped. If you are feeling stagnant like I was feeling a month ago in December, if you are feeling like, hey, where is this going? Like, I'm completely lost. Like, hey, I hope this helped. Take a break. Like go to the forest if you can, and just silence out all the outside noise, and like get in touch with yourself. Find a way of finding the things that ignite your heart and eyes. Because for me, guys, I'd completely lost the passion, the gas for this podcast. But the time I am excited for the new podcast. Like I wake up first thing in the morning, I'm like, oh my God, like, what's it gonna look like? Like, I'm piecing this and that together, and it's gonna be great and better, and I can't wait for you guys to hear all about it. But for now, if you need someone to talk to share about life and personal development, I'll be here. Wherever you got this from, I'm sure there is a way for you to find me. I'm everywhere. I'm on LinkedIn. I am on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. Joanne, Inaviona, Joanne, whichever you want to put first, you will find me. I'd be glad. Like, I'll warm my heart to know that I'm able to help. So whatever you're going through, you're not alone. So go right through it to get through it. I will see you guys on the other side, which means in the first episode of the new podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen into this one. You've been the absolute best listeners. Your feedback, your criticism, your patience, it's been the reason this has been worthwhile. And I don't take it for granted. It's for people like you that listen that's giving me the guts to say, if I make a new podcast, if I start over, then some people will listen. So thank you so much. I hope 2025 is a wonderful year for you. As for me, I pray for grit and grace and consistency at this year. I don't want to whine about life. I want to build muscle for tough times. I want to chase the things that keep me up at night without any shame or justifying things to society or faking it to make you guys feel like, oh, I'm living. Like, I am going to chase the things that ignite my heart unapologetically. And I don't think there's anything that's going to pay off in this life than that. And I hope you do the same. So, bye. I will see you in the new chapter.